So I wanted to talk today a little bit about the so-called ritvik issue, and that issue is, what did Srila Prabhupada intend to have going on in his society after his departure? Was he going to continue to be the Diksha Guru of his ISKCON society, or was he going to depute a certain number of people to be the new Diksha Gurus? They were called the New Gurus in 1978, the leaders of ISKCON who declared, we're the new Gurus. Well, did Prabhupada request or order new Gurus for his movement? And if he had ordered Gurus for his movement, would he not have given a very long, detailed explanation of how these new Gurus were going to operate, what kind of prayers would be given to these Gurus, what would be their status, how would they be viewed by the disciples? Would they be viewed as Uttama Adhikaris, or the most exalted personalities, or would they be seen as Madhyam Adhikaris, which is a middle class of Vaishnav, or would they be seen as Kanista Adhikaris, or regulated neophyte devotees? It would seem that Prabhupada would have said they should be viewed as one level or the other, and then we could have adjusted the society accordingly. But what happened in 1978, they were declared, these new gurus, they were declared to be Uttama Adhikaris, or the most advanced devotees, pure devotees, who are purely serving Krishna with no contaminations at all, and that is how they were advertised. So clearly something went wrong, because they were not Uttama Adhikaris, and so many contaminations began to manifest one after the other. So it was obvious, it was evident, they were not Uttama Adhikaris. Unfortunately, this made Prabhupada look very bad. Why did Prabhupada anoint 11 people to be worshipped as Uttama Adhikaris when they were clearly not on that level? That means Prabhupada made a huge mistake. He was unable to identify who is a pure devotee, who is not a pure devotee, and so he just whimsically made neophytes, or what is sometimes called Kanista Adhikari, or the lower level, the beginning level of devotional service. But as it turns out, these 11 weren't even able to follow the standards of the Kanista level. The Kanista is actually a person who follows the Brahminical standards of devotional service, and he follows very strictly. He's not fooling around, goofing around, having illicit sex, taking intoxications, going to Reno to gamble, and having affairs with some disciples or a number of disciples, or illicit sex with men, women, and children, which is what was going on with these 11, evidently, or supposedly. So they were not even Kanista Adhikaris. So we get challenged all the time by the followers of ISKCON's new gurus, and the question they ask is there any proof that we have to worship Uttama Adhikari gurus? Can you prove that? Well, maybe, maybe not, but can you prove that we need to worship conditioned souls as gurus? We need to worship Kanista Adhikaris as gurus, or people who are not even Kanista Adhikaris need to be worshipped as gurus? There is no statement anywhere in Prabhupada's works where he ever said, I want Kanistas or less than Kanistas to be worshipped as Krishna's successors. There's simply no such statement to that effect. So we can challenge them very easily, counter-challenge them, with the question, where is it authorized to worship conditioned souls? And clearly, people who are falling down left, right, and center and deviating in so many ways are not free from being conditioned souls. They're still highly conditioned. Therefore, they are not gurus. They are not acharyas. They are not Krishna's successors. And it is an insult to Krishna to say that deviants are his successors. In fact, Srila Prabhupada says, anyone who says that a deviant is Krishna's successor is the same as saying Krishna is a deviant, because the Guru is Sakshat Hari. He is the same quality as God. So if a deviant is the same quality as God, then God is a deviant. So this is not a good idea. But this has been the whole idea of the ISKCON leaders ever since 1978. Yes, they're Krishna's successors. Yes, they're Uttama Adhikaris. Yes, they're as pure as God. But yes, they're deviating. Yes, they're falling into illicit sex with men, women, and children, and so many other problems. Well, then how can they be God's successors? So then you're insulting God. You're making it look like God has bogus successors, because God is bogus. So we get asked to prove this and prove that and prove the other, but before that happens, shouldn't they have to prove that conditioned souls and deviants and debauchees and people falling down left, right, and center are God's successors, are, were, or could have been God's successors? So there's simply no statement to these effects. In fact, there's thousands and thousands of quotes where Prabhupada says, do not allow imitation of pure devotees. Do not allow conditioned souls to pose as pure devotees, or the results will be catastrophic. The results will be very bad for your society. And we can see the results. So many criminal activities went on and on and on, and that includes mass child molesting, amongst other crimes like terminating dissenters and the police making raids on the ISKCON properties and devotees being engaged in many criminal activities, which was in the media, was in the newspapers, and so on and so forth. So all kinds of criminal activities were going on, and the Berkeley police told me in 1980 that the ISKCON Berkeley Temple is just a haven for crimes and criminal activity. And Hansaduta was recruiting criminals just getting out of jail to come and live at the temple and be his disciples. But we are not allowed to say these people are not pure devotees, because then we would be the bogus ritviks. The bogus ritviks are saying there's crimes going on. The bogus ritviks are saying there's mass child molesting going on. The bogus ritviks are saying these Uttama Adhikaris are having illicit sex with men, women, and children. Yes, we can't listen to the bogus ritviks. We have to worship these GBC gurus and the people who were voted in and anointed by the GBC gurus. And we cannot have Prabhupada being worshipped as the guru anymore, because that is the posthumous, post-samadhi, post-mortem worship. Worshipping Prabhupada is no longer possible. So Prabhupada says you have to judge a thing by its result. And what is the result of worshipping conditioned souls in ISKCON? Well, ISKCON became an emptied out ghost town. Even in 1988, Lokanath Swami was asking, where have all the devotees gone? ISKCON has become a ghost town. It is running on a skeleton crew. Okay, so ISKCON was once a fat and happy society of all kinds of people, little babies running around, householders, all kinds of people. Then it deteriorated and became a skeleton. How did it become a skeleton? So we have to explain why ISKCON becoming a skeleton is the wrong process. It became a skeleton, and we have to prove that there's something wrong with that process. So nowadays, all kinds of people are arguing, what about the July 9th letter, which only appoints ritviks? What about the May 28th tape where Prabhupada says they will be ritviks after I am no longer here? What about the will that says this and that and the other? Well, first of all, we have to ask, why were all of these documents hidden? That's the first question. The contents of the letters is important. The content of the will is important because the will says in the future they will have to be my initiated disciples. That's important. But I had to get the will from Hansaduda's safe. I had to have somebody break into the safe to get the will out of there. We didn't have the May 28th tape until Sulochan bribed someone from the archives to get a copy of that tape. Why didn't we have that tape? The July 9th letter was not being circulated. So none of these documents were being circulated. All of the 1977 conversations were not being circulated. Only 1,000 copies of the conversations were made in 1990. We got a copy of that in 1990. So why did it take so long for all of these documents to come out at all? And are these the inclusive of all of the documents? That's another question. Are there documents that were lost or hidden or no longer available? Gauridas Pandit, who was Prabhupada's servant in 1977, says there are tapes where Prabhupada was making further elaborate discussions on the Ritvik issue that are now missing. They are no longer available. They're gone. So the upshot is we have to prove that Prabhupada did not want conditioned souls to be worshipped as Krishna's successors, and then they're hiding and suppressing the documents that we would need to prove that. So there has been a lot of covering up, hiding, and manipulating of documents, and manipulating testimony, and suppressing documents and suppressing testimony, not only on the Ritvik issue, but on every other issue. What about all the child molesting going on left, right, and center everywhere? Well, that was suppressed. Complaints about that issue were suppressed and still are suppressed. So they suppressed, complaints about many crimes, including child molesting. They suppressed the documents. They suppressed this, that, and the other because they're criminals and they're not gurus. So they suppressed all this stuff just so they could stay in power and they could usurp the assets and have big seats and big fancy cars and live like elite jet set swamis, which is what they did. So we have to explain how the Ritvik idea is bona fide, that it's a good idea to worship pure devotees, and we're being suppressed. And sometimes we're being violently suppressed. We have people banning us, beating us, chasing us with baseball bats, and sometimes terminating dissenters. And even now there's various devotees complaining about things going on in ISKCON who want to remain anonymous. There's a big forum now on the child mistreatment issue that happened in ISKCON, and a number of the people on that forum want to remain anonymous because they're afraid of the repercussions that will happen. And the same thing happened with the poison issue. The tapes where Prabhupada is complaining about being poisoned were hidden. I didn't get a copy until 1997. And I was very fortunate to get any copy at all. Many tapes were destroyed or lost. But I do believe that Krishna wanted this incident to be known publicly, and he saved the copy and got that copy into my hands so that people would be able to find out that Prabhupada had, in fact, complained about being poisoned, but it was suppressed. No one was talking about it in 1977. And I have a number of friends who were there at the time who said, yeah, we knew that Prabhupada was complaining about being poisoned, but we were terrified of bringing that out because these people are gundas and criminals and all the rest of it. So they're suppressing information. They're suppressing the poison complaint, amongst many other issues. So we have to prove things in the face of severe repression and suppression. Suppression of documents, suppression of eyewitnesses, suppression of victims of child abuse, and so on and so forth. So that's a big problem. We're having to prove things in the face of a very vicious counter reaction to anyone exposing things going on with the ISKCON leader regime. But Prabhupada is very clear on all of this. He says people who make false acharyas are destined for the most obnoxious regions of the universe. They're going down. They are the most dangerous elements in human society. And they are servants of Kali Yuga, or what he calls Kali Chelas. So Kali Yuga wants us to worship conditioned souls. It is a satanic agenda. And that is why banning, beating, murders, molestation, and so many other criminal activities have resulted from this, let's call them the anti-ritviks. The anti-ritviks. Because the ritviks want to worship pure devotees and not deviants. And the ritviks want to see child molesting and crimes cleaned up and removed from the society. You know, it's no coincidence that the quote-unquote ritviks are the same people who are protesting the changed books issue, the molesting issue, the poison issue, and all the other criminal type activities that have been going on left, right, and center all over ISKCON. The ritviks have been the counterweight force because the ritviks, the quote-unquote ritviks, are people who see that worshiping the pure devotee is the right idea and cleaning up all the crimes is therefore also the right idea. We don't want the pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, to be connected to criminal activity and child molesting and so many other deviations that have been going on left, right, and center among these so-called pure devotees. So I could get into all the documents, the July 9th letter, the May tape, the will, and so on and so forth, but I don't really want to cover that herein because other people have done a quite good job of it. I've also done it in other places. Suffice it to say, there are no documents anywhere, there's no evidence anywhere that Prabhupada wanted us to worship conditioned souls as Krishna's successors. He never said that. He says the opposite. You cannot allow the worship of conditioned souls in your society, or it will cause severely devastating effects. And it has. And I don't think anyone can really argue with that. So the GBC also recruited people from other maths, like the Gaudiya Math, Narayan Maharaj, and others, to help them cement in their idea that conditioned souls are Krishna's successors. In 1984, Narayan Maharaj was helping the GBC write the Guru Reform Notebook. So they were saying at the time, the Guru needs to be reformed, Gurus are deviating, Gurus are criminals, Gurus are having illicit sex, Gurus are taking intoxicant, don't worry about it, we're going to reform and fix that. Well, that is not ever stated anywhere in any Shastra. You cannot reform and rectify the pure devotee. The pure devotee is in contact with Krishna. To say that the pure devotees are criminals who need to go to reform school is simply ludicrous. It just flies in the face of everything Prabhupada says about pure devotees. So they had a guru reform. They voted in a bunch more gurus, and a bunch of those gurus started to deviate again. So they did not fix the problem, because you cannot fix bogus pure devotees. It's not fixable. It doesn't work. You know, you have to worship the actual pure devotees. You cannot just make artificially someone a pure devotee and then try to patch up and repair and fix the subsequent mess that's going to happen from doing that. So I always have to prove that worshiping a pure devotee is a good idea because we have a reform and we're voting in more gurus and we're fixing the problem. But this is all post-dated check. They are not fixing the problems. The problems, if anything, are getting worse. And now ISKCON is becoming like a Hindu operation. And Prabhupada said, if the Hindus take over my mission, it will become a business. And it is becoming a business. They have, weddings and car pujas and funerals and baby blessings and all kinds of things going on for the Hindus. And they're removing more and more of the Western devotees. This just happened recently. They removed the Western devotees from the Leicester Temple so they could bring in a Hindu management. And they want Hindu management so they can rake in money from the Hindus. And the Hindus are more and more being on the property signatures and legal documents. The Hindus are taking over ISKCON, let's face it, because the leaders don't want to preach to the Western people anymore. They want to just focus on their cash cow, and the Hindus are their cash cow. So this whole Ritvik thing is a smokescreen so they can take over the assets, make it into a Hindu business, and rake in the cash and live like elite jet-set gurus, which is what has happened. This is not about Ritvik or pure devotee, which is better. This is all about converting ISKCON into a business. And this also happened in the Gaudiya Math in 1936. They kicked out the devotees. Then they had a business of showing the deity to the public. And Prabhupada said this was all about making money. It's not about some philosophical point of Siddhanta and philosophy. So when I helped have ISKCON sued for $400 million for mass child abuse, one of the big complaints I got was, "Oh, Prabhu, you're making it so that we will have less donations. You're going to discourage people from donating money to ISKCON." Okay, but what about all the children who were molested? And some of them are now taking their lives. They're suicidal. They have post-traumatic stress disorder. They have so much trauma from being abused in your system. What are you going to do about them? Well, we're not going to do anything about them. We're not helping them. We're just going forward with our Hindu business. So that's what's happening. They're very alarmed, very concerned about having an impact on their donations. So a few years after I helped the Wendell Turley lawsuit, some of the followers of Jayapataka wrote to say, "Oh, you helped the BBT lawsuit. Oh, you helped the Bangalore lawsuit. Oh, you helped the child molesting lawsuit. Oh, you're helping all these lawsuits, and you have cost us $100 million. You're our biggest expense." So, okay. They're not worried about the Ritvik issue or that issue or the other issue. They're worried about their money. And many devotees have told me that the reason that all this has gone on, the banning, the beating, the molesting, the assassination of dissenters, is because most ISKCON devotees just cannot fathom that the leaders would be this duplicitous and criminal. They just can't believe that the leaders are this nefarious, but they are. So I just wanted to say here that this is not really an issue about are they Ritviks, are they pure devotees, are they this, are they that. They are criminals, and this has been a criminal takeover of ISKCON, and it's continuing up to the present day. And combating the Ritvik issue means they don't want to be held accountable, because if they're just Ritviks and they're just administrators, then we can ask, where is the money going? And why are you putting deviants in seats of worship? Then we can start asking questions. They don't want to have questions coming forward, so they just keep saying, we're pure devotees, we're gurus, no one can challenge the guru, and in that way they keep everyone suppressed. and they keep all the complaints suppressed. And it keeps them in power, and it keeps the money, ka-ching, going into their pocket. So Prabhupada said that about the Gaudiya Math. They usurped the asset. They became gurus so they could take over the buildings. They became gurus so they could take control of the money and the asset. And this was not a ritvik issue. It was a takeover, a criminal takeover. So I hope people understand that more. We're not dealing with a philosophical bunch of people. We're dealing with criminals, and this was a criminal takeover, and they suppressed the documents and suppressed the devotees so they could take over the assets and make a business out of ISKCON, which they have done. Anyway, I hope this helps. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.